Hi guys, and welcome to part 2 on how to jazzify a pop song. In part 1 I went through the typical jazz chord progressions that you can use to jazzify almost any song. So I'm going to assume you have worked on those. And in this part 2 I want to dive into the concept of secondary dominance, which will be very important in your development as a reharmonizer, let's say. First, let's go through the chords we did use. So we used a 1, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression in C major, and the chords we used were C6 add 9, A minor 7 as our 6th chord, D minor 7 as our 2 chord, and G13 as our 5 chord. We also had a 3 chord, an E minor 7, to the 6th chord, to the 2 chord, to the 5 chord, like that. And those are all diatonic chords. In other words, they are derived from the C major scale. The most important chord, of course, next to the root, is the dominant chord, the G7. And the dominant chord is always the 5 chord in the scale. So in C we find the dominant by going 5 steps in the scale. However, we could find dominants to all the other chords in the C major scale as well, and those would be called secondary dominants, and I will explain to you why. Let's take the 6th chord, the A minor 7. If you want to find the dominant to this chord now, we start from the root, from the A, and we walk in the scale 5 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, I'm using the C major scale, but I'm starting from A. So I'm finding the 5th degree here. You can also think of just a power chord. So we will build our dominant chord from this degree, which is an E. And now the dominant chord is always a major chord. So let's find the third. The diatonic third is a G, but this is a minor third, and we need a major third for our dominant chord. So what you do is you raise the 3rd degree 1/2 step. Now we have a major third, and we also add the 7th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 1, 3, 7. Now we have created a secondary dominant, namely E7. And E7 is the dominant to A minor 7. So now we have a new chord here that we can use. And again, it's called secondary dominant because it's a non-diatonic chord. This G sharp is not a part of the C major scale. But we need that to create a dominant. So that's a secondary dominant. Let's find more secondary dominants. Let's go to the 2nd chord in the C major scale, which is a D minor 7. So what was the process to find the dominant to this chord? Play only the root, use the scale, the C major scale, starting from D. So you have to think of the D now as the root. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We ended up on an A. Again, think of the power chord. However, I don't want to play the chord, I don't want to have the root so high. So what I do is I play it 1 octave lower. And the way you can think about that is, if you have a root chord on the 5th string, you can go a 4th interval down. So 1, 2, 3, 4 to find the dominant note. Either a 5 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a 4th interval down, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here we have the dominant note. We need a major chord. Now we can be economic because we know our 6th chord was a minor chord. Well, we just need to change this one to a major chord. And then we have an A7, A dominant 7, which is a secondary dominant to D minor. So now we have 2 new chords to play around with. We have the E7, the secondary dominant to the 6th chord, and we have A7, the secondary dominant to the 2 chord. Let's take another chord. Let's take the 4 chord in C major. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's play it here. It's an F major 7. Right, so the dominant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a C. We need a major third. That's good because it's already natural in the scale. and we need the dominant 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, actually, because this is a major 7 in the natural scale. We need a dominant 7, a flat 7 for our dominant chords. We need to, in this case, we need to lower the 7th degree, the natural note, to a B flat to create the dominant. So this is the dominant to the 4th chord. So now we have 3 new chords in C major that we can play around with. E7 to the dominant to the 6th chord, A7 the dominant to the 2 chord, C7 the dominant to the 4 chord. I hope I'm making sense. However, the important thing is to experiment and actually play this in a song. And I thought, why not play the classic Wonderwall song we all grew up with and love? Perhaps not. Let's first just use the verse and play around with the normal chord progressions we did in part 1. Today was gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. So works perfectly, and I would advise you always, when you start with a new song, just do the typical chord progressions. They will almost certainly always work. However, sometimes the natural diatonic chords won't work with the melody, so then you need to start thinking about the secondary dominant. So that would be the second step in my process. Let's do that with this verse in Wonderwall and see if we can fit in a secondary dominant somewhere. Today, it doesn't work there. Today was gonna be, there it works. So instead of playing the minor, D minor, I played the D7, the dominant to the dominant, and that works. Today was gonna be the day that they gonna throw it. I'm just thinking here what to do. Could do that. So again, you just have to experiment and find your way, see what works. What more? We did have the dominant to the 4 chord, so let's try and fit that in. Today was gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. Worked nicely. Gonna throw it back to you. Alright, so now we already have added 2 more chords. Let's try and fit in the dominant we had to the 6th chord somewhere. Today was gonna be the day that they gonna throw it back to you. Worked nicely there. So you see many different solutions. So here you have to determine what you like by, well, basically on what you want it to sound. It becomes a question of taste, what you want to do. Cool. So now we have actually applied all the secondary dominants we found. Now, your let's say your assignment will be to try this in this song. Play the bridge and the chorus. Then all the roads we have to walk are winding, and try to find the chords that you think fit using these chords, and maybe you can find some more secondary dominants. So let's end there. You'll have that as an assignment, and in part 3 I will give you some solutions to those parts, to the bridge and to the chorus, and see what we can come up with. I think this is a good way, because you have to, it's such an important step in the process is to do this on your own and kind of discover it. But use the typical chord progressions and use the secondary dominants, because this creates a nice starting point for your reharmonization skills.